Welcome to the Virtual Coffee Lab. My name's Mike. Today we're going to be taking a look at how I've set up my roaster in the lab. We'll look at everything from the venting to the machine and what it's sitting on, and how I've organized my beans and all of the roasting supplies that I use every week when I roast coffee. So stick around. So the first thing I wanted to do was start with the venting, because I guess we're just going to work from the top down. And our venting that we have here is a 3-inch B venting, B pipe venting. What that means is that there are two pipes. It's a double-walled pipe. So there is an air space between this outer pipe and then there's an inner pipe. And it's probably a half of an inch of space, and that allows this roaster to be able to produce a lot of heat, 400 degrees, 500 degrees temperatures. By the time it's up here, it's already cooled quite a bit, but during the middle of a roast, I can take my hand and set it right here and I won't burn my hand. What that means is that you can have this pipe come in contact with structures of the house. It's rated for that. So I have this pipe touching the drop ceiling here. I'm actually in a basement, and I'm venting out through a window. It's a glass block window that I made, and I'll show you that when we go outside and take a look at the setting there as well. But it's this glass block that you can see. You can see that it has one block that is devoted towards the vent pipe, and then I took some mortar and I kind of packed around that. I left an open space in there so that I could shove some fiberglass insulation between the mortar and the vent pipe. And that just provides a little more of an airtight barrier between the mortar and the vent pipe itself. So this vent pipe is in sections. And so if you take a look and see, we have elbows, we have long pieces, we have short pieces. And the best way that you can get this set up if you want to do something like this is to go to your hardware store, your local hardware store, or look online if you want to try to do that online. I'll try to get some links that I can show you where I got my vent pipe from or the manufacturer, so that you can take a closer look at it and see if it would work for you. I don't use flexible pipe because I'm concerned that the chaff it'll get stuck, and potentially it's going to cause resistance, blockages, or potentially even fire, but it will definitely influence the airflow, and that's something we should talk about when we get outside and look at how this looks outside. We'll take a closer look and talk about wind and airflow and how that impacts the roast while you're actually roasting the coffee. So this is a great vent pipe. The elbows can be manipulated at each of these hinge points here. You can twist them, and so it will change the angle of the pipe itself, so that you can get this. This actually goes up, goes to the back a little bit to bring it closer to the wall, and then directly goes up to the next elbow connection and makes a turn that goes directly in. You'll also notice that there is a metal strap that is wrapped around the pipe just up near the window, and then it's attached to some wood so that it gives rigidity, stability, so that pipe is just not flopping around. I don't have leaks. I don't have wind that is or smoke that's escaping from the vent pipe. It's a really good system. You can see by looking at the venting outside that first I have this air barrier or this wind barrier. I'll talk about that in a minute. But the pipe comes through the mortar, you can see it, and I have a diverter on it, what basically is supposed to, I think it's supposed to help with wind. It may help keep out like animals and things like that, but ultimately I put a little bird cage, kind of a little screen inside to keep any animals out. So, like if a mouse or something were to try to crawl down, I wouldn't be roasting a mouse. As far as the air barrier is concerned, when it's windy out, it really impacts my airflow. So the wind outside gusts and air blows in down the pipe and influences my airflow settings. So for example, last night I was roasting coffee and it was really windy out, gusting 20 mile an hour winds, 15, 20 mile an hour winds. It's been windier and I've roasted, and it's difficult because using my normal settings, the flame would actually get extinguished. So I knew that I didn't have positive pressure. I have negative pressure coming in. I had air blowing in through the pipe and into the roaster and extinguishing my flame. So I had to increase my fan speed to compensate for that, to balance the airflow, so I had a slight draw out of the machine and outside. So I normally would have a setting of 35 on my dial, and I ended up going to 45 just to maintain my low airflow setting, which was kind of crazy. So that's the whole purpose of the barrier, was to shield the wind. And it does a good job, but it doesn't, it was windy last night. And so, it's not going to block the wind completely. I need to have air access around that pipe for the smoke, any chaff that blows out of there to go somewhere. Okay, next is my gas supply. So I plugged into natural gas from the city. You saw the gas meter outside, and I have a direct connection up in the ceiling. And if you take a close look, it's not, it's something that I did. I know that it's safe. I did it kind of properly, but it was kind of tight in space, and I needed to have this pipe, this connection go, the hard pipe, go back towards the wall. So my connection looks a little unorthodox, but it served its purpose. I haven't had any leaks. I'm very confident. My connections are all leak proof and solid. I'm very happy about that. I also have two shutoffs. The one shutoff is right here. That's closed. And that's open. And then my other shutoff is right here. It's the gas valve itself. And this is where I control my gas flow. And I shut this off as well on the roaster. Okay, next is the cart that's supporting the roaster. This is a cart that I got on Amazon. It's basically a rolling cart made out of steel tubing and wireframe surfaces. This is something that you may see in commercial kitchens or in industrial applications, and I have wheels attached to this that lock. So I can lock the roaster in position. But if I ever need to do work on the roaster or move this for any reason, I'm not carrying the roaster from point A to point B. I unlock the wheels, detach this vent pipe, and if I need to, detach the gas, and I'm good to go. I forgot to mention the wood counter surface. This is a solid piece of wood. Came from a workbench that somebody didn't want, and so I took that piece of wood and I cut it to fit so that the machine wasn't sitting directly on the wire rack. At one point, I found some scrap granite. So there's countertop places that use that leave free scraps of granite out, and if you grab a few pieces of that, you take this wire rack and set the couple of pieces of granite and then have your roaster set on that. I just didn't want it sitting directly on the rack. Okay, so I also have these storage bins that I use. I like this because it gives me the opportunity to hold a 20-pound bag of coffee or individual 1-pound bags of coffee, depending upon how I'm ordering, what I'm ordering, how much. And I use kind of a dry eraser little labeling system, so you can see by looking at these different containers that I've got them marked what's inside the container. And then when I run out of them, I usually just erase them. So this one has a whole bunch of different labels on the front, and I've only got 2 coffees in here right now, so I need to erase a couple of these labels. But I can buy 6 or 8 different coffees and throw them in one of these bins, and it's great. It keeps them dry. The basement is cool and dry. It's not a moist environment, so I'm not concerned about moisture, but I do keep the bags sealed, and I think these containers kind of help protect them. So I'm roasting probably about 5 pounds a week is what I roast on this roaster. Sometimes I've roasted more, but it's usually anywhere from 3 to 5 pounds. There are some now that are starting to drink decaf, and so that's kind of messed up some of our sharing when we're drinking coffee. But that's cool. I mean, we've roasted some great decaf in here. You can't even tell it's decaf coffee. So the bins help us separate. Maybe people have bought coffee for themselves and they don't want it mixed with other people's coffee or what have you. So these storage containers are a great feature. I'll put a link to the containers that I use as well. Got some of my tools and supplies, roasting supplies, other than just the beans, in these bins as well. So I have Ziploc bags that I use to separate smaller portions of coffee for people, and I also have some paper bags, and I can put some labels on if I want to put labels on and get fancy, but I really don't do that very often. I also have my roaster tools, so my wrenches and all of the I have my original fidget box that I keep as a reference in case I need to order a new one. I'll know what to get. So I keep some of that stuff in here as well. Okay, lastly, I have Artisan that is connected. So I have a laptop that I have that's running Artisan. It is connected into the software connecting the different probes. And that's what I use to roast as far as my logging software goes and monitoring the roast. I really depend on Artisan a lot. Sometimes I depend on it too much, and I need to remember to always use my senses when I'm roasting. So I'm listening to the coffee, I'm smelling the coffee, I'm looking at it to watch the color of the beans and the transition and the texture of the bean. So all of those things, this roaster allows me to do that. I can physically pull the beans out and inspect them, smell them. I can use the sight glass and look inside to see the beans and the color change. And between that and Artisan, I pretty much know exactly what's going on with my coffee. And lastly, the one thing that people don't talk about too much is cleanup. So this roaster has a chaff collector, but that doesn't mean that 100% of the chaff makes it into the chaff collector. So some of it might get blown outside a little bit. Some of it will fall down in this gap between, there's a very thin gap between the drum and the housing of the roaster, the body of the roaster. And so there'll be a little bit of chaff that falls down in here that I will vacuum up. The chaff collector, the opening is in the back. You open this door up and you can put a vacuum tube in there and suck that out. It's really quick and easy. And the greatest tool that I have that I just love is this little vacuum. So you can get something like this online for 40 bucks, and it allows you to actually suck up the chaff. It also has brushes that spin around that allow me to vacuum up the carpet here if I want to do that. I also have a full-size vacuum. One thing that I did want to point out that is kind of separate from how I've got my setup, but it's really the most important thing, is a fire extinguisher. I have a fire extinguisher mounted on the wall right next to the roaster. You can see it here in this picture, and I've never had a roaster fire, but if I need to access a fire extinguisher, it's right there next to me. If you have questions or you want to learn more about how I did this, feel free to leave a comment. That would be awesome. If you would like to learn more about where I get some of my supplies, let me know and I'll try to answer your questions. And I just appreciate you being here for this video. If you like what you saw, hit the like button. Subscribe to this channel. That would be great. That helps me with YouTube, showing that something good is happening here. And most importantly, hit that notification bell so the next time I put a video out, you'll be first to be notified. So thanks for joining me today, and we'll see you next week at the Virtual Coffee Lab.